Hi, everybody. I'm Candid Frank, and this is NLL Lacrosse Talk. Gary Groob, right there, top right corner. And we have a very special guest. How's it going, Cam?
It's going great. Thanks for having me.
Cam Holding, a former NLL player. So he knows what it's like to play in the high-stress National Lacrosse League. And, of course, you've had a long life in lacrosse. And I guess the first question we always ask is how you picked up a stick.
Yeah. I guess I'm 36 now. So I actually started when I was 3 years old, born and raised in Whitby, Ontario. And so actually my dad has played his entire life. He played back in the day, Whitby Warriors, Gerard Road, which I'm sure some folks will remember. And then he played Brooklyn Redmond. So when I was 3, he gave me a stick. I'm sure I had a stick before then, but I actually started playing in like leagues and whatnot and really getting after it in practice when I was 3 years old. So very thankful he put that stick in my hand, and I can owe a lot of my life experiences, success, and who I am as a person today to the sport. So super grateful.
What kept you in the game?
The love of the game, the love of the sport, the fact that I enjoy playing, and the people. I mean, everybody in this community of the lacrosse community is just good people. It's hardworking people, it's kind people, and it's folks that you enjoy spending your days with and being around. So it's a no-brainer, and I'm still involved heavily in the game today. So
a few years ago, I suggested to the commissioner of the day that it might be a good idea to expand into Oshawa. And, you know, there was you could tell that he wanted to be very careful about what he said. Now, knowing that you have a team there, tell me what you think about the community that you were raised in, because Whitby, Oshawa, pretty close to each other. Yeah, it was kind of an obvious move for those that love the game of lacrosse and those that have grown in the hotbeds of lacrosse, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's an incredible spot for games. And I mean, you saw their first game. I think they've sold out a couple games so far, but I mean, you've got, you know, all of those fans that support lacrosse in the summer season, the MSL, and you pop an NLL team and they can see the best players on that stage week in and week out. So it was kind of a no-brainer. I think one of the biggest hurdles that I'm sure they had to overcome over the last few years was the proximity to the Toronto Rock. So I'm sure that played in some level of decisions on the delay of even exploring that as an option. But both are kind of thriving markets right now, which is great to see. And it's really cool to have Oshawa have a team. And selfishly, I was a little depressed I retired this year because I was like, of course, the 1 year.
Well, that's why I'm raising the issue, because here you are, a guy that's grown up with lacrosse, and now this opportunity, you missed it by a year. But I have to say that the important thing here is, as a member of the lacrosse community, you know, Peterborough, Whitby, that area in general is a hotbed of lacrosse. It must feel good because of the people you know who love the game of lacrosse that you grew up with and played for, to have this happen.
Yeah, so cool. And like, even the people that I know now have kids that are playing in the minor system. So it's like kind of this full circle thing, but it's really cool to see.
Yeah, because that's the ultimate, the ultimate goal for a lacrosse player is to play professionally. We can debate and argue and discuss how much players get paid, but at the end of the day, to play at the highest level and to be able to do it in a local community I mean, you can't speak to it, I know, but you can to the degree that you did, which is, I wish I had been able to. But now you've got kids in your community that are going, I can't wait to play for Oshawa.
Yeah, which is so cool because, like I said, you get to see it. It's right there on a Friday, Saturday night. Like, you can take a 10-minute drive and go watch, and that's where fandom starts, right? And that's where kids after practice, they go get their extra reps because of that right there. Like, they want to compete on that next level and that highest stage, and it's motivation, right? And that's what drives a lot of young athletes and young players, regardless of the sport. So to put eyes on the product and see the players and have the players in the community and in the marketplace. And like, that's what ultimately is going to grow this game and continue to grow the game and develop players that are motivated to keep getting better and pushing the limits and so on and so forth. So it's awesome.
Let me bring Gary into this conversation by doing this segue that Gary always loved. When a family goes to lacrosse, that's an opportunity for them to play, but also the ones that play a chance to come and watch. So the symbiosis between being a player and a supporter of NLL Lacrosse is very, very tied together, right, Gary?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And to get to your point of, missed it by a year, your former teammate, Kyle Rubish, he hung around long enough that he's 10 minutes from home now with the Tribute Center.
Yeah, good on Rubes. I mean, he's still grinding, and I mean, that flight out to San Diego every weekend must have been tough for him with a young family. And like, again, if I lived in Whitby, like it's a no-brainer. You want to go play in the place that you were raised and that raised you and your family and friends. I'm like, what a cool experience it must be for him this year. So super happy for him. And despite the fact that I'm not still playing, I am super happy. So I'm good with the decision that I made at the time.
Well, that's great. That's great. Let's drill back a little bit. I want to go right back to when you were beginning. Coaches, mentors, guys like that, other than Dad, obviously, that really got you in the right direction.
Yeah, so there's one gentleman, I don't know if you guys will know, but Billy Iyer. So he was around, played with my dad, but Billy was my dad's best friend, and he's been one of my biggest supporters my entire life. He coached our young teams with my dad. So he's one guy that, and even to this day, like he would go watch my games. He'd send me texts after games. Like he's just been a huge influence on my life. The other big one too is actually Derek Keenan. So when I started Junior A, I didn't even think that playing in the National Lacrosse League was even something I could accomplish. And yeah, I'll never forget. He pulled me aside one time after practice and was like, "Hey, have you ever considered doing this?" And I'd said not really, but he kind of encouraged me to explore that pathway. So I started doing it then. He drafted me to the Edmonton Rush back in 2010, I think.
Yep.
Ultimately, I got released at the last training camp, but just to experience that camp, and I was on the floor sharing a training camp with like Brody Merrill, Gavin Prout, like all these guys that I had looked up to, and then I was like, it's that motivation piece, right? Like even as a player, I got released and I was like, you know what, I want to really make a go at this. So I spent a year working my ass off to have another chance. And thankfully I was given that chance by the Colorado Mammoth.
Right.
Yeah.
I want to talk a bit about, because we spend so much time with a lot of guys talking about the Orangeville programs, talking about Peterborough. Talk to me about the Whitby program, because you came right up through Whitby Minor Lacrosse and worked your way up from there. Talk to me about how special that program is and was to get you into the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, if you just look at Whitby, I mean, the facilities like Iroquois Park, everybody knows Iroquois Park. It's like the greatest place ever. It's a perfect environment to go and learn as a kid. And like you're showing up to go play at IP 2, 3, 4, and you get to sit around and then there's these two windows with these trophy cases, and you can look into the windows and you can watch when I was a kid, you watch the Junior A Warriors or the Senior A Redmen play. And so like having the ability to do that was really cool. And then also like having my dad play for both of those organizations was also really special for me. And so I actually moved to Michigan when I was 15. And so I drove back and forth every single summer up until I think I was 24 years old. So I actually had another inspirational guy. His name was Ed McCusker, but his son and I played together, and he built me a room in the basement. And so I mean, I owe a lot to him too on giving me the opportunity to have a place to live and continue playing in Whitby each summer.
Wow. It's funny because, that the area, everybody congregates at Iroquois Park still to this day. And, I'd love to see it get back because, you're talking about that heyday, which is roughly when the Man Cups were being won and all that. And Gavin is really spending a lot of time now getting recognition to the front of the jersey, not the back of the jersey. We keep hearing about Six Nations and Peterboroughs and all this and that and all that. But the stuff that Prouder's done over the last couple of years to bring that program back, both with the Merchants and with the former Redmond lacrosse club, is tremendous in getting the pride back, and with that, the fans and the base again.
Yeah, which is really cool. And I mean, even I'm on a lot of the alumni email chains, and like the amount of chatter in the last 2-3 years has exploded. And I've been working with somebody like Johnny Fusco, been kind of helping him kind of organize some information, and there's golf tournaments. And so they're kind of like, building up a lot of experiences around it, encouraging people to come out for the season tickets. And the other thing that I've really taken notice of too is the Merchants. Like you mentioned the Merchants, and when I was playing, you didn't really hear much about them, but like a lot of my buddies, I think they went out and encouraged a lot of these older players to stick around and keep playing, and they found success. And so the Brooklyn's obviously been solid as well. But
well, the Merchants are solid. They won the Senior B last year, finished in the finals, lost to Snake Island, but they put up a hell of a fight. And it's a lot of the youth from the area, which is showing me that the programs really are worthwhile and really building to the next generation of NLLers coming up.
Yeah, and it all kind of goes back to the development, right? And when you got guys like Gavin Prout from the top leading that developmental charge, that's just going to kind of flow downhill. So those guys are all going to, raise it up. And like I said, it's massive having somebody at the top like him. And I mean, formerly it was Derek Keenan, and like these guys are giving so much to these programs, and like there's no surprise that they're going to continue to rise because there's so much care being put in on the back end.
Right. Now, we talked a bit about your box background. I want to get a little bit of your field background as well. And we're going to secondary school with Donald Wilson Secondary School and long stick defender. Talk to me about getting into, after having a career and a background with that and everything at box, to get into field, was it an adjustment?
Yeah, so I think when I was younger, I was trying to explain this to somebody the other day. So we played field lacrosse in the fall, and I think it was like maybe 4 or 5 weekends, and you would go play like 2 or 3 games, not tournaments. Peterborough had a team, but back then it was the Oshawa Blue Knights. So that's how I kind of got introduced to field lacrosse, but did not play a ton of it. I actually moved to Michigan when Edge started. So all my buddies, Mike Cudmore and a number of other guys, went and played for Edge. And I started a high school program with my father in Michigan. So that's kind of like where I really started playing, like getting more reps. And actually, I didn't even play. So I went to Sinclair, and we didn't even have a school team there for field lacrosse. So my first 2 years I was in Michigan, we didn't even have that with the school to participate in. So I really didn't play a ton, but ultimately just, worked hard, and I had an unconventional path to the Major League Lacrosse. I went and played club lacrosse at Grand Valley in Michigan, which is down the road from my parents' house. I had a Team Canada tryout thanks to Dave Huntley, and was fortunate enough to earn a spot there, and then play with the Denver Outlaws as well.
I want to talk a little bit about that as well. We've had Tony Siemens, we've had a number of the other guys on the show as well, and really dug down into the background of the team and the fan base and everything like that. Now, originally you got in by Washington or
for the Major League Lacrosse outdoor? Yeah, so I was drafted by the Chesapeake Bayhawks in the and so I was there for, I don't even know, a month or so. And then at the time I was living in Denver, I was playing for the Mammoth. And so I had actually requested a trade. And Tony Seaman actually worked that out. So with Coach Cottle. So they treated me so well at the Bayhawks, like what an incredible organization they were. And then obviously being able just to, drive 10 minutes down to games at Mile High Stadium, that was pretty cool. So.
Right. Well, you also look at the team, man, John Grant Jr. and a whole mess of other guys. But the one thing I got when I had Tony on the show was he was so engaging. To listen to him speak, and I can only imagine when he's talking to you about strategy and blueprinting and things like that, but to listen to him speak and to listen to all the knowledge of all the years, it was just, at times you had to remember that, wait a minute, I got another question coming. But he just has that way of just, just sweeping you up. Being in the dressing room, what was that all like?
Yeah, being in the dressing room on that team, I mean, that was like the most epic culture. It was fun, it was competitive, it was driven. Obviously, Tony's an incredibly bright mind, and you mentioned, I mean, we had basically half of Team Canada on that roster. We had Zach Greer, we had Jared Noble. Like, it was an absolute riot, and so we had a good time. And but Tony was definitely steering the ship and making sure that we were all in check. But that was pretty incredible couple of years there with the Outlaws playing for Tony.
Right. Now, I want to go back a little bit to your university years, and everybody knows you as this lockdown defender, but you set all kinds of records for offensive prowess and points and things. How did it go that you were this offensive juggernaut, and we all know you as this defensive lockdown specialist?
Yeah, so that's what I do in box. I mean, growing up, I was an attackman. I was an offensive player in box. And then when I went to college, I played nothing but attack, and had a pretty good college career. And then even in Major League Lacrosse, and I was offensive midi for Team Canada. They started me as a D midi because nobody knew I played offense at the time. And then at the end of the tournament, they're like, "Wait, you're an offensive guy?" And so I finished the tournament for Team Canada in 14 as an O guy. But essentially, what happened was Coach Keenan in my junior A, after that conversation I talked about earlier. He kind of looked at me and said, like, "Okay, you're playing O, but I think, like, if you're going to compete at the next level, I think you need to consider playing this transition role and kind of shift what your role is going to be on the team."
Right.
I was able to run. I was fast and physical and gritty and didn't shy away from loose balls. And so he ultimately, encouraged me to look at my game a little bit differently. And I'm forever thankful that he did, because it's tough to crack an NLL roster as an O guy and definitely stay there as an elite player. And,
Right.
without those conversations and guidance from him, I don't know if I would have had the career that I did. So.
Right. Well, getting back onto the field there, was being a box player advantageous to you? Because again, most of Canadians are known for is playing box on field. It's
Yeah.
changed over the years now that we have got more programs like the Hill and a number of other programs. But back then, a lot of it was box on field. And then we go back to being blueprinted from being that feel of being on the floor.
Yeah.
Was it a tough transition to do, especially at the college level?
No, I don't think so. It kind of just depends on the system you're in. I mean, again, if you look at that 2014 Outlaws roster we had, it was a lot of box guys. So a lot of our offensive systems were kind of built around that. Collegiately, it was kind of the same thing for me. Like, I just use a lot of my box principles. But nowadays, like, the hybrids are incredible between Canadian-born players going to play in the U.S. And now you're starting to see some American-born players that are starting to pick up the box game. So there's kind of bleeding into both sides of the game, which is really cool to see. And like 10 years from now, we're going to have the same conversation, and it'll be really cool to see what that transition looks like.
Right. Now, we usually talk about, your box skills on the field. I want to talk about how your box skills improved because of speed, because of field. And we're doing it with the Whitby Warriors. Of course, Keenan is your coach. But what did you find to be the most advantageous coming back in and playing there now?
Sorry, from field to box, how those skills transition? Yeah, I mean, field is just like a different pace, right? Like, you play a lot faster, where box is a little bit slower but more controlled. Obviously, you have the transition piece of box lacrosse, but the ability to get up and down the field and make decisions quickly, draw and dish, transition, fast breaks. So those are kind of some things that kind of reflected my box game a bit.
Right. How did competing over in Junior A really get you ready for your next level? We talked about you being picked by Derek Keenan for Edmonton and just falling short. It brings me usually to my my favorite question, which is your first training camp. Was it what you envisioned?
Yeah, it was not what I mean, there's two parts to that. There was one at the Oshawa Civic. We did like a fitness testing. That was what I envisioned. That was pretty high intensity. And when you have, like, I'll never forget, we did like a beep test, and it was Brody Merrill and I, and we were going, we were the last two. And like, that was pretty intense. And when Brody Merrill's on the team, like, that guy brings the level of compete. And so it was real serious. And then that same first couple weekends of training camp, the way that I don't know if Keenan still does this, but the way that he operated his training camp was he brought in low numbers and started building chemistry and preparing for game one on training camp one.
Right.
Which was a little different from a couple of the other teams that I had played with, and certainly some of the other coaches, where it's more like bring in a lot of numbers and you're grinding it out for that roster spot. Like Keenan, I think, approached it as, I want to start building that chemistry. I want to start finding my team on that first practice so that we can start preparing. Because at the end of the day, you got 3 weekends to start getting ready for game one with the NLL.
Absolutely.
Which I actually really enjoyed, and I think a lot of the players did too. But meeting some of the guys like Prouder, and then you finish your training camp and you go out with them on a Saturday night. It was a lot of fun.
Talk to me about coming into Colorado in 2012. You now have been revitalized. You just missed in Edmonton, and now you have this drive. When did you have the aha moment knowing that I can do this? I can make this team?
Yeah, I would say is certainly the very first training camp. And before that, obviously, you had Eddie Como, Sean Ferris, and Bob Hamley. They were really kind of pumping me up beforehand, like encouraging me, like, "Hey, man, you can do this," and really giving me that confidence. So, like walking into training camp, I knew I was confident already in my abilities and that I had a real chance to compete. But ultimately, it was the preparation that I did leading up to that training camp and all the stuff that you don't see, right? And that goes with any athlete. But then the second I set foot, like I knew that I put in the work and I was physical. I had the speed. I had all of those things that you need that I learned from in the first year of getting released. I made sure those weren't going to be an issue for me with the Mammoth. And so I was super confident, and I, ultimately had a really good training camp and showing there.
Now let's move into your first game. First of all, the feelings of that first game. You're walking through the tunnel, and now you're into 15,000 screaming fans. What's the emotions going through your head?
That was awesome. We played the Minnesota Swarm, and it was the all-decade night. Yeah, so it was like the top 10 players in Colorado Mammoth history, and a bunch of these guys are like icons to me. It was so cool being around them in the locker room, whatever. And then obviously playing it at the time, it was Pepsi Center. That thing was like 17,000 fans almost every single night my first year.
Right.
I think I had 2 penalties in the first half just because I was like flying around all over the place, and I was so excited to get out there and play. And I was like, okay, harness the energy, like get that out of your system, and now just flow with it. So was certainly really excited. It was a ton of fun, and that is one building that I wish I could play at one more time. If I had to pick one building, it would be going back to that place. And even my last couple of years with the Seals, like going back there, there's still some fans that have the same seats that will come over, and I'll wave to them. And, it's a special place for sure.
Absolutely. Now, as a transition guy, in my eyes, that's a dying breed in the NLL. We have everybody, they're specialists, and, we're pulling up, and we're not the fastest game on 2 feet in my eyes anymore, NLL. However, in the summer game, I love summer ball. I absolutely love MSL, WLA, Man Cup, all of that. That transition game is still dominant, and it really sets a tone. Being that guy, how much can you really unsettle your opposition when transition's working?
Yeah, I think transition's key, and I think that we are going to see the transition game explode in the next decade. I think especially with the evolution of sixes and how important that's going to be after the Olympics.
Right.
Your 2 players, I think that there's going to be more importance on those guys that can play offense and defense and push the ball. And not to mention, like you just alluded to, it's more exciting. Like transition play is so exciting, and that is what a lot of, I think, fan growth will come from excitement, as with anything, right? And so if fans are excited when they're watching something play, they're going to be more engaged. And I think that's what you get out of transition players today.
I agree 100%. I miss it a lot. And when it is done to perfection, it's just you marvel. You just sit back and just, the speed of the game is incredible when that's moving at full tilt. Let's talk about moving from you get picked in the expansion draft, and you're gone from Colorado over to sunny San Diego. And here you are with Pat Merrill and an expansion team. But talk about building everything up in San Diego, because really you set your tracks in there, and over your years in San Diego, not only did you help build a franchise, you helped build a youth program, you helped build the future, the elite, and I want to kind of drill into all of that piece by piece. But let's start with just getting into San Diego and the team first.
Yeah. So I've told this story a couple times, but at that time in my life, 2017, I had just tore my ACL and I started coaching at Michigan State. I just built a house, and I honestly, I was retired. I told Colorado in that expansion draft, they're like, if you're going to come back and play, we'll protect you. If not, we're going to leave you unprotected. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to retire. I'm done. So they left me unprotected. And Pat Merrill, I mean, he did a great job. He called me, and man, after I got off the phone with him, like I would have run through a brick wall for that man. So he kind of reignited my drive to get back out there and play and compete and want to continue to play in the National Lacrosse League. And so obviously made the decision to come back to San Diego. And by the way, it's San Diego, it's sunny California. Like it's not that bad, it's not, he did a great job on the on floor stuff, but it's a beautiful place. So I was all about exploring this as an opportunity. And man, what a franchise, and the opportunity to go play for, at the time, Steve Govett was kind of running the show, and I had played for him in Colorado, and he and I have a good relationship, and Joe Tsai is the owner. So, I mean, it was a really exciting time in my life for sure to come back. And again, it was another moment of like, I was down. I thought I was done. I was super depressed with the ACL thing. And then I was like reignited a love for the game that I needed at that moment in time. So.
Right. Now, Pechanga Arena, I've made the trip a few times now, flying out of Toronto and doing that thing. Yeah. But I actually really enjoy the arena. It has that 70s feel to it. But the fan base, though not huge, is knowledgeable. And talking with them in the parking lot at tailgating, talking with them between halves, and just getting the feel of it. The ones who don't know want to know, and the ones who do know are very engaging. And it's a really great community.
Yeah, it's incredible. And you kind of said it earlier, like I think I don't even know what they're averaging this year, maybe 6, 7. But regardless, I mean, we'd like more people in the building. I think that'd be great. But the people that show up are loud, they're passionate, they care. They love the team. They're incredible sports fans. And at the end of the day, they could go to the beach when it's 70 and sunny, but they go support lacrosse, and like they care. And it's really cool to see how much the organization has done to grow the brand here locally and commit to the community. And I mean, it's just going to continue to pay dividends, because every time, back when we did the autograph lines after games, you always talk to, this is my first game. What'd you think? Oh, we loved it. We'll be back. And so that's the stuff that as a player you love to hear. And certainly as an operator of the team, you definitely want that to be the MO every single night you put on a show. So.
Yeah. Now, being an older player, when you got there, late 20s, older player. But, what was it like to start mentoring and having guys like you who you knew of coming up and having that struggle? Now you're mentoring. And what would you be saying by taking them under your wing?
Yeah, that was pretty cool to come back. And like, even though, so I was on the older side of things, like, our team, we had Dan Dawson, we had Brody Merrill, we had Garrett Billings. So we had these other guys that were older than me. I'll call them the old guys. But so, well, I was, I was still learning from them, even, at my age, and I had already played for 7 years, but I was still learning from those guys. And they were still taking me under their wing, and they were teaching me some things. But we did have a lot of young guys, and over the last 7 years, we had a ton of young guys, and I think that's super important, because it's important to take guys under your wing, because at the end of the day, you show up to training camp and you're all competing for jobs, right? So the same guy that you're mentoring is also competing for your job. So it's an interesting culture, but at the end of the day, you're there to win, and you want the team to put the best foot forward and pick the best guys, and you want to teach guys how to be pros at a young age. And I think there's some guys in the room that still to this day that I think I had a pretty strong bond with and good relationship with, and I hope that culture that started with guys like Brody and Patrick on day one, and myself on day one, and I hope that only continues to get better from the examples that guys like Brody and myself have set before.
Right. Now, being a guy who grew up in Whitby, you spent a bunch of time in Michigan. You now are off to sunny San Diego, and you basically have a slab of clay. And talk about how it changed your perspective on lacrosse in general, being able to have this new expansion team and you're working with it and watching it starting to flourish. Because San Diego, first of all, was impossible to beat at home, but as a
Yeah.
franchise itself, has been one of the most successful.
Yeah, and certainly in recent years, like the newer expansion franchises have not been that successful.
Right.
But it just comes from, I mean, back in the day, our first couple of years, like we were kind of like just this group of misfits. Like we were guys that were on the back of a roster, or we were guys like, myself that maybe thought we were done or come at it. Anyways, it was just like this random group of guys. And so we all kind of, bonded together over that. And we kind of created this like team identity over that. And I could say this 1,000 times, but having Brody Merrill as your captain, like you're not stepping onto any floor with anything but your absolute best. And that is the culture that he doesn't even have to say anything. That's just what you get when he's in a locker room, which was really special. So yeah, it was really cool to kind of build that from nothing. And ultimately when you're the underdog. Every weekend you're viewed as the underdog back in certainly that year one. And if you have that same mindset game in and game out, you're only going to keep getting better and stronger.
Right. Now, the junior SEALs, you got a chance to coach them and mentor them and bring them in. They talk glowingly of you. One of your goalies, Quinn McLaughlin, I've had him on my Sunday show a few times, watching his development and watching things go on, and of course talking with his dad, who is his biggest booster, and just that kind of hearing that kind of thing about you as a coach and as a mentor, to me is just no wonder the program is so exceeding, because if you have that kind of energy and that kind of love for the game and bringing that to the younger generation, that you can't lose.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's such a valuable thing. I mean, one, that's what I've done my entire life since 2010. I've been 2005 actually when I started the program, the high school program with my dad. Like we're builders and we want to share this game with everybody that we can. And obviously, I was very thankful that when I came here and was provided the opportunity to teach and coach and do all this stuff, like the SEALs gave us all the resources we needed to go and offer a fantastic product. And I'm passionate about coaching, so I'm happy, that kids like Quinn responded and have enjoyed that. And we've seen a number of players come through the junior SEALs, and we also started a program called the Royals back in the day. And now we're watching, one of our Royals kids compete on the floor, and he scored his first goal last weekend. So I think youth development is one, it's massive for the kids that want to get better at lacrosse. It's good for the organization to have fans. And ultimately, it's great to keep developing good young men and women, as we did have girls as well. But it was awesome. I love doing that stuff.
Well, talk to me about how you originally, you got into coaching. You talked about in Michigan, and let me just say this, because you were, selling yourself short. You were just named to the MCLA Hall of Fame class of 2025, which to me is humongous. Talk to me about, first of all, the Michigan coaching, and then some of the other stuff. What got you really to, dig in with both feet?
Yeah, so it was back in 2010, and my dad, again, he's always been my biggest supporter. I was home for the summer. He's like, yeah, you should think about getting a summer job. I was like, all right, I don't know what to do. And he's like, why don't you run a summer camp and like start teaching kids how to play lacrosse in the community? And so I started there. I did a camp, and parents loved it, and then they asked me to run a team, and so that kind of grew. And then I built this whole business in Michigan. We had like 15 teams between Detroit, Grand Rapids, and I had some really good people kind of involved in that business as well. From there, I went on. I coached at Michigan State University, which was a club program, but we took that program from an unranked in 2016, and we won the MCLA Division I national championship in 18. So that was really cool. And again, I think like coaching, the way that I've responded best to coaching is like having a great relationship with your coach and putting players first, and like getting to know them as people, and not just showing up and saying, hey, this is what you're going to do. Like it's a relationship. And so that's how I kind of view coaching. And so far it's been received really well by the people that I've worked with.
Right. Now, it doesn't hurt in San Diego. That outdoor practice facility is I think of all the hot arenas that I had to play in when I was young. And, yeah,
Yeah.
if I had that, man, I'd still be at it, I think. That's
Yeah,
incredible.
that place is amazing. And so prior to the one that you're talking about, we had one that the junior SEALs started on, and the SEALs actually practiced on, and it was like this small rink in the back parking lot of Pachanga, and it was tough. It was a character builder, no doubt.
Right.
But the new rink, obviously was done with a partnership with the YMCA, and I was actually the project manager for that build. And I mean, what a facility that is, and for those guys to have access to something like that in their back door outside, it's a great place to go train. So,
Right. Well, what advice would you give to the younger players trying to make it to NLL or even PLL about what they should be doing and how they should be doing it?
yes, it's funny. I coach a high school team as well, and I had a kid come ask me that the other day. And even if to expand on that, even just to make an NCAA program, right? A lot of kids have their sights set on that NCAA, and I kind of said this earlier, but you can do as many reps as you want at practice. You can work as hard as you want. It's what you're doing when nobody else is looking, right? And I think that's where you really find a lot of growth. And if you have your sights set on something, like, it's certainly possible to go and achieve it. And it's just a matter of how hard are you willing to work, knowing that there's a million other people working the same, right? And so I used like that 1 year where I got cut from the Edmonton Rush. I've never worked harder in my entire life. So I took failure and I made it an opportunity.
Right.
And so that's kind of like the biggest piece of feedback that I would give is like, it's work ethic, and it's literally just drive. And then it's coachability. It's, you set your focus on something and just work your ass off to achieve it.
Right. Yeah, because there's winning and there's learning. And to
100%.
know how to take those lessons. I've talked about it a number of times on the show, is to learn how to win, you have to learn how to lose first and know what
Yeah.
you don't want and how to work towards what you do want. And it seems as though your programs, especially now, has really taken hold. I want to look at some of the things that were when you were coming up as a coach. You had so many great coaches along the way. Was there any one who stood out, or is it just a mishmash of ideas and making it your own, which is where you're at now?
Yeah, I think certainly a mishmash where I kind of like developed my own style of coaching. But I will say that when I retired, I actually called my, one coach, and that was Pat Coyle. I called him just to say thank you for kind of everything that he did. And he, whether he knew it or not, like he was easily my favorite coach. And I think that came down to, if you ever watch his like press releases or anything, like, he's very level headed.
Yeah.
And he's there to like help make you better. If you mess up, he's going to be like, hey, you messed up, but here's what you got to do. And so he'd kind of help you through that process. But more importantly, you always knew that he would be there for you. He'd talk to you. And I really, really enjoyed my relationship with Patty while I was on the Mammoth.
Right. Now, I had Mark Millen on the show a couple of years ago, and the one thing that he kept hounding about was that, yeah, we spent a lot of money on club and above. But when we start looking at the grassroots, we always seem to neglect it. Now, you spend a lot of time with grassroots. I still think that you're in the minority, as opposed, even here in Canada. I don't think we spend a lot of time with house leagues and things. We spend a lot of time and money and effort on the guys who want to make it. But in my eyes, the ones who are playing the house leagues and things like that, they may not have aspirations to be NLLers, but that's your fan base, and that's your future fan base. And to nourish and encourage the love of the game, I think we're kind of missing on that over here. Is it the same where you are?
Yeah, so I get two different thoughts on this. One is, I literally was having a call with a couple of our coaches this morning. We have, I run West Elite for Mad Dog, which is a program here in California. And we have our top level teams are called black teams, and we have a chrome team. And I just took over operating these field teams, and all of our teams have two coaches. And I made it a point to make sure that our chrome team has three, because I believe that, that's our players, that they do need that individual attention. They need the development. They need
Right.
And like you said, like a lot of times, sometimes that stuff gets neglected, and it shouldn't, and it should actually be the opposite, where those kids should actually get more attention, because your top players with one coach, you could probably get as much done there. So I think that's huge. The other piece too is like, it's interesting because I think Mark's based in the Northeast, Millen. Yeah. So I think I've kind of talked to a number of people about this, but I think it's different in Canada versus the US. Like where we grew up in Canada and I played for Whitby, when you play your rec, you're not, the barrier to entry is low, the costs are low because it's community based, and a lot more lacrosse in the United States is based around revenue. It's businesses, right? And so there's a lot more revenue opportunity, which is what the focus ends up shifting to. So the costs are driven much higher. So then you naturally are neglecting those newer players to the game. The cool thing in Canada is that even when you're playing rec, and I go play for the Whitby Warriors, the guys that are volunteering time are some of the best minds in the game. Right, which it doesn't always happen in the U.S., but I think that's why you have such hotbeds in places like Whitby, Vancouver, they're like anywhere in Vancouver, Peterborough, because you have these guys that their kids are now playing. They're like, oh, I'm going to coach a team. Little do you know, you have some of the best coaches at your disposal right there, teaching your kids the basic fundamentals that get it. So I think that will happen over time in the United States as the game continues to grow. And certainly you've seen it in places like Denver, Colorado, and now you're starting to see it more on the West Coast. But when the talented minds start giving back more, I think that's where you're going to see that.
Right. Well, let's drill in a little bit about U.S. Boxla, because from what I've seen, especially with the women's game, I've noticed that they are actually more organized than the Canadian game. And when I had Dana Dobie and I had a few of the other women, Aaron Bakes, and I had them all on the show after the World Championships, I was actually alarmed at how organized the U.S. was, and Canada didn't have their first practice till 2 weeks before the tournament. It's like, this doesn't make sense to me. It just, everything is flip-flopped in my eyes.
Yeah, I had no idea that that's kind of the process that Canadians took. But I do know one of my friends was actually on the American developmental roster as they were kind of going through that selection process. And, she was telling me nonstop about the amount of stuff they had to do to prepare their weightlifting. They had to submit stuff like their diets, like all this stuff, like they were dialed in, and it paid off. So, I would almost bet that the next time there's a World Championships, the approach is a little bit different from the Canadians. And unfortunately, maybe that's, I guess they learned a lesson maybe. And I bet that it's going to be different the next time, because I can't imagine that feeling is going to sit well with Canada Lacrosse, and certainly the girls that were on that roster. I know that they're all hungry to compete and win gold. So.
Absolutely. And I say I've had a number of them on the show, and one of my favorite was Michelle Boyer. Got a few from the U.S., a few from Canada. We had one with the European, Asian, and talking about all the struggles and the triumphs and all the other things. The one thing that stood out to me was, especially with the women, was equipment. And we didn't have anybody except for Gate Lacrosse, and U.S. was smart enough to get the girls fitted, and they had equipment and they had all this stuff, whereas everybody else is using tape and their brother's hand-me-downs and trying to find a piece that fits and a helmet that works and a stick that works also. And, so I think the U.S. has a lot more idea on how to run a program and make it successful long-term than anybody else right now.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, you have a machine that is U.S. Lacrosse. The governing body for the American lacrosse system is pretty incredible. And actually, there's some former Canadians that I actually work with that are now working with U.S. Lacrosse. So they've got folks in the mix and in the know on the back end that are certainly helping with that.
Right. Now, I want to drill a little bit of State of the Union, and I want to talk a bit about, we're just talking about the Worlds and Europe. And I've told you off air that I've been going to the Rubeski for a number of years. And the one thing that's standing out to me is the European programs. Each year I go back, the level keeps getting quicker and better and better. And we got a lot of North American coaches out there now, a lot of former NLLers. So these systems are in place and these players are getting better. Do you think that we're going to get like hockey at some point where, we didn't think much about Europeans coming through until I think Austria beat Canada in the Canada Cup or one of these World Championships? Everybody's, What happened?
Yeah, stunned. I think it's hunger and it's a desire, right? And if you go over there, you can feel how much they love the game.
Mhm.
And so they want to continue to get better and better and better. And so naturally that's going to happen. And literally the example we just talked about was the American girls box program. Like they were
Yep.
hungry. They competed. They put in the work on the back end. And, maybe the Canadian, maybe, I don't know for sure, but maybe they were just like a little bit complacent thinking maybe that wasn't necessary. But I do know that, like you just said, all the Europeans, and one country I'm excited to watch over the next decade is going to be Japan. What
Yep.
happens with sixes and with worlds, like they have committed so much to that program, and every time we see them on international play, they get better and better and better. And we bring our game to them, like Paul and the PLL. They go do their games in Japan, so those players are sitting there watching their idols, and
Mhm.
now they're going to go emulate, and they're going to work hard so that they can get to that same level. So yeah, it's going to be interesting, but I think that it's a drive to get better, and they're hungry to get better and keep competing at a very high level.
Right. Now it's interesting. You talked about Japan, and it was in the San Diego Worlds where they turned my head when I was at San Diego State watching these
Yeah,
games. And I would make a point of watching their games because it was just, I really thought they were in the wrong tier. I thought they should have been in the Canada US tier because they may not be good enough to beat them yet, but they could compete. And that, in
totally.
my eyes, was, other than Haudenosaunee, I didn't see anybody else who could be in that realm.
Yeah, no, they're incredible, and they play a different style of the game, right? Like if you look at their athletes, they're uh, typically compared to the U.S., Canada, Haudenosaunee, they're a little bit smaller, but they're
Mhm.
shifty, fast. Their stick work, like you can physically see when you watch them play that they have to get reps and lots of reps because their individual skills are incredible, and when they catch up with the IQ, like it's going to be scary for sure.
Yeah, and they're homegrown. Unlike most
Yeah,
of the other teams where they had an uncle or an aunt or a grandfather or grandmother who could spell that country, they
yep,
actually are all from there and they all really take that country pride to
yeah.
heart. And boy, oh boy, even in the World Box Championships, to watch them and even watch the women who weren't playing come for support.
Yeah,
And it's a whole team family thing. And it's really what the lacrosse community is all about.
agreed. It's really cool to see. Yeah,
Right. And the other thing about the Worlds I had noticed was guys would come in to watch the guys play. But slowly everybody wound up watching the women because there was so
yeah,
many different storylines going. And of course, that gold medal game was a made for TV movie, with the
agreed.
US
Yep.
winning coming from behind. To me, for the game, that's probably the best result. As a Canadian, not so much, but as
Yeah, for sure.
for the game itself, I think that was the best result possible because it put way more eyes on the game itself.
Yeah, a ton. And like you said, there was a ton of storylines. They're close games. You didn't know who's going to win, and
Yep.
they were exciting. And I think that they did play a lot of that transition. The ball was, I mean, it's just, I'll say, less strategic maybe than like watching a men's game, or less calculated, which again brings excitement. So I was glued to the TV for all those games. They were incredible.
Right. Well, being there, the other thing that I had noticed was both Canada and the US, it wasn't just beat on a team like Finland 21-4 or 21-1, but it was after the game, not just shaking hands, but taking time to talk, show things, do things, and really take other teams and other countries under their wing. And I know that there's, WMSL up here and WALL up here as well. And a lot of these guys are slowly coming up and learning from these guys. And I love that because now this is how it's going to grow. We all do it together.
100%. And that's one of the coolest things about international play is seeing folks from all different areas of the world get together. And like, I remember in 2014 after games, you'd have, Team Mexico, Team Japan asking if you can swap this or swap that. And so, like you said, building that relationship with other countries, it's going to just continue to fuel the growth.
Absolutely. I want to go into sixes. And of course, with the Olympics coming up in a couple of years, I think that you are probably one of the best to talk to me about it because you play both field and box at professional levels. Your thoughts on sixes first, and this is the thing that we're going to show the world. Will it be enough to show the world to really elevate the game?
Yeah, I think so. There's like such a layered approach to this, and why sixes, I believe. And I think having somebody like Paul Rabel and Mark Riccio would be great as well. But sixes, when you're looking at this and you look at this 10 years ago and you think, how do we get this into the Olympics? I know that part of it is how can you make it accessible to the masses, right? And not just the masses in the United States and Canada, but other countries that might not have the resources to build a box rink. Everybody's like, okay, we'll just do a box. It's like, well, you can't really do that because in international competition, not everybody can just pop a box rink up. Right. So you make barrier to entry a little bit lower by reducing roster sizes. So you have to get 12 skilled players. So it's a little bit easier that way. Sure, the folks that are longtime, NCAA lacrosse players, pro lacrosse players, you're not going to like that. There's no face-offs. It's different. It's change, and naturally people don't respond well to change right away. But I think that the pace at which it's played, it's going to get more countries playing. It's going to get more kids playing. It's something you can pop up at recess or after school. So I think the conversation should be, in 2029, we should sit back and say, okay, what kind of impact did it have? I think it will make a pretty tremendous impact on the growth of the game long term, and get sticks in kids' hands while the other disciplines will kind of reap the benefits down the road as well.
Right. No,
and that's the key, right? Is that there's another step required. The step that you're talking about is introduce them to the stick. The easiest way to do it is the field. Get them on the field, and if they like box lacrosse, they can move on to that.
Yep, 100%. 100%. But if you just came out of the gate swinging and saying this is the way it's going to be, well, then you might have a lot of people saying we literally just can't do that, Right. And so I think, well, some people are going to, might be negative, have negative thoughts about it. I think long term it's going to be fantastic. So.
Right.
But there is a process we have to make sure we latch on to. In other words, we got to strike while the iron's hot. Whoever's in charge here, whoever decides to do what they're going to do, it has to happen in close proximity to when the Olympics happen and once they're done.
Right. Totally.
Yeah. We need an exit strategy for sure. Otherwise it was, that was great. And then we just keep moving the way we were and we don't gain anything from it. So we need 100%. The traction from it. And I look to, again, guys like you who know and really know where we should be going after the fact. And as well, I hope they both PLL and NLL have thoughts and meetings and try and figure out where we're going from that point. I was wondering though, should we be for the goal, should we be having a 6x6 or a 4x4? And 36-32 is a great score, but should we show a little bit more on defense too?
It's a really good question. I think goalies are so strong. I think goalies are so good. I don't know. That's an interesting question. Making a smaller net, maybe, but I don't know. I like the way it is. Again, it's entertaining, and you're causing excitement. You're seeing more goals isn't necessarily a bad thing,
right? So. Well, Coach Bob Terring also brought up one other point that I hadn't thought about was, the guys are so good and so accurate with their shooting that if you only give them a 4x4, you might kill a goalie.
Yeah,
because
true.
So accurate, they're just going to be flaring at him as opposed to 6x6 and go for the corners and try not to kill him.
Yeah, that's so true. And I don't know. I shoot around and coach with Trey LeClaire, and if he hits a goalie, that goalie's going to feel it, but. The same token, I think that the Sixes game is going to put guys like that on full display, which is what's great for this game. And you have guys like him and Zach Career, those types of players that are two-way players that can play on both sides of the ball. I think it's amazing for the game.
Right. What's your vision for the next generation of defenders?
Ooh, that's a great question. I mean, if you can't pick up on it now, I think that the future of the box lacrosse game lies with, I'll say, American growth. I think that Americans are going to transcend the National Lacrosse League. Certainly, that's where your biggest markets are. That's where the population is. And you take these big athletic American players and you teach them how to cradle and do the stick skills and give them nice stick skills. I think that the days of the egg and spoon guys are going to be gone. And at the end of the day, we're selling a product with the National Lacrosse League, and you want it to be exciting. And I want to see Marquez White pick up a hard contested loose ball in the D end, push the floor, and either stay or have a quality shot on net. That's exciting. You know what I mean?
Right. Absolutely.
So I would love to see more of that in the game.
Right.
And by that you mean close contact.
What's that?
By that you mean close contact.
What do you mean?
Well, like part of what makes box lacrosse so interesting is the being in tight, right?
Yeah.
The in tight battles, right? That's what's lacking in field lacrosse.
Exactly. Yep.
Right. Over the next 5 or 10 years, how do you see this going? Do you see it actually becoming a full-time gig? More and more are making it a full-time gig. Do you think that this is going to be finally, well, it would have to be PLL and NLL working together so we have a full season. Do you think that we're able to pull this off?
Totally. Yeah. So honestly, it's a really good question. I think that if you ask me right now, like there's a lot of guys that are making this full-time career today.
Right.
Like there are guys that are playing in both leagues that are making full-time wages and, really, really solid wages.
Yeah.
I think that, I think that the National Lacrosse League has so many expenses, and it's like they're not, the revenue, I guess, isn't necessarily there to be like, all right, we can afford to pay all these players this much money. I don't know the back end business of it that well, but ideally you need to put butts in seats. You need a TV deal to generate revenue, so then you can then go back to the table and say, oh yeah, here's our revenue, no problem, we can pay you more money. But right now, when we have some buildings that are having 2,000, 2,500, that's tough. The Buffalo Bandits might be able, if you had a conversation with them alone in a room, maybe they could pay their guys a full-time salary. But there's some teams that can't. And I think one of the biggest things is going to be that TV deal and getting that's where big dollars start to come in. That's with like the NBA and MLB, like it's big TV deals.
Yeah, that's what Jamie Dahlwick had said too when we're talking about the CBAs, was the amount of money that comes out of the owners' pockets, which isn't really known. It's in and around $750,000 just for just operating expenses, and then you have to worry about all the other things that go along with it. And to try and, without a TV deal, without a main TV deal, we're kind of flying in the wind.
Yeah, it's tough. And ultimately these guys, the owners they're only one of their main sources that they're heavy dependent on is butts and seats.
Yeah.
Right. So, that's it. And so if you go and you get an Excel sheet and start putting down the expenses to run one of these organizations, it's not a small amount. These guys put up a lot of money for sure to run these teams.
Absolutely.
Well, to have a league, you have to be gate driven. You have to have the gate.
Yeah.
But you also have to have the TV. And I'm going to add another thing, not just the TV deal. You have to have TV deals, not just one. And I think that's where you trip over the important part of making money. And that is when you have a competition on where it's seen. Because at the end of the day, that's what this all comes down to, right? It's a competition. And lacrosse has to appear to be in the competition, in the forefront, right? And until that happens, players won't be able to get paid because there'll always be, that game that everybody loves to play, but, they're not really looking to get paid for it.
Yeah. No, I think that makes a ton of sense. And then the other piece to this too is like these owners, they have fixed expenses, and it's like, okay, can you get more games in the mix, which is a whole nother conversation, so that you can offset revenues against your fixed expenses. But again, if you're putting butts in seats, that's easier conversation to have, because you're making that revenue. And then when you start putting butts in seats, then your corporate partnerships go up and so on and so forth. So at the end of the day, we need more fans. We need more passionate fans. And I think that'll continue to drive everything. But as I said, I strongly believe that I think that American box lacrosse will help the growth of the box game overall. There's so many players.
Yeah, I agree. How do you want to be remembered both as a player and as a mentor for the sport?
Well, that's a good question. As a player, I'd love to be remembered as, a gritty guy that focuses on work ethic. There was just, anytime I show up, I'm working my ass off on a game. If it's a loose ball, like relentless work ethic all over the floor. So tough, gritty, and certainly not afraid to run into a corner, and then pushing the ball with speed and pace. The other big one that I think for younger folks would be a communicator, and that's on the floor and off the floor, but certainly on the floor, nonstop communication.
Mm-hmm.
And what the other part was as a teammate or
As a mentor to the sport.
as a mentor. Yeah, to the sport and to like teammates. I think just somebody that's positive, has a positive outlook on life, on the sport, taking maybe some adverse situations and finding opportunities in those situations. I think a lot of folks sometimes can kind of get put on their heels in those moments, and I like to definitely put myself on my toes. But as a mentor, definitely somebody that guys could go talk to. I mean, I was always available. My phone was always on. I'd always take time to meet for film with, guys that were drafted. I'd meet with them to go over film. And certainly showing guys how to be a pro and how to act like a pro. And that goes down to how do you conduct business as you travel? How do you show when you're wearing a team logo? What are you doing? Right. So, I would say just being thought of as like a true professional on and off the floor.
Right. If you could go back and give advice to your younger self, what would it have been?
That's another good one. Give advice to myself. I mean, man, as I sit here now, like I had a great career and I switched positions. That's a really good question. I don't know what kind of advice I would give myself. I mean, just continue working hard. Like that work ethic will just take you wherever you want to go. That's a good question. I don't know if I got one for you there.
That's okay. I really want to thank you. I want to thank you for taking the time and going through your career and going through your life with us. And I know how busy it is. Our loss watching you in the NLL is youth programs and high schools and everybody else's gain because of having the knowledge and the personability that you have and being able to. It's guys like you is why I'm so confident that lacrosse is in really good hands as we start building and moving into becoming the fourth big sport because of the passion and the knowledge and the commitment that you have to the youth. And that's the key, I think.
Yeah, thank you very much for saying that. And I'm still connected to the game. I'm watching NLL games every weekend. I coach youth. I coach club. I'm working on growing box lacrosse with our club program across the United States as well. So I'm always down to talk lacrosse, certainly box, and continue growing this beautiful game that's given us all so much.
Right. And if you ever need help marketing anything, please just reach out. I am more than happy to do it for you.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Frank?
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure as well, talking to you and talking about the game. And I think the most important thing about progress for the National Lacrosse League, and lacrosse in general is, I think the key point is here when they can justify playing more games, because the salary is based on annual salary. It's not based on how many games. So it's kind of hard to etch out an annual salary out of a very short amount of games. And I think that's the key. One of the key things they have to get over, right? And being able to play more games and be able to afford to do it. But to Gary's point, that's the investment the owners have to make, right? They have to invest on the expenses it takes to run a league for more games. So this is the challenge. All I know is every week we talk to all of you in lacrosse, and I'm always impressed by your love of the game and your forthrightness and your willingness to be straightforward and honest. And I really appreciate that. And I'll tag on to Gary and say thank you for being here. We really appreciate people like yourself that are involved in lacrosse, not only after picking up a stick, but even hanging around after they're done carrying it around. So thanks for doing your part in making lacrosse the great game that we know it is.
Absolutely. Of course. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Honestly, I really enjoyed the day today. So Cam Holding, a former player in the NLL, took the time to join us and ask or answer some serious questions. Gary Groob, of course, co-host. I'm Candid. Frank, thank you for watching, everybody. We'll see you again on Thursday for another NLL Lacrosse Talk.